Welcome back. In the last couple of videos we looked at how to use an API connector to return an additional claim via a user flow and how to debug your connector code using reverse proxy. We looked at how to authorize a resource by using the claim as a policy. In this video I'm going to expand on that a bit by coding the connector to return a bunch of roles rather than a single policy. We'll be using Graph API to do that, so let's get started. So the first thing to do is to go into our app registration and apply some permissions. So we need to add some Graph API permissions, so let's add a permission. Let's choose Microsoft Graph and application permissions. We want to scroll all the way down to the bottom, select user, and we just want to read user.read.all. So we want Graph API to be able to read user information. Let's add that permission. And then we just need to grant admin consent for that, so quite easy to do. There you go. Okay, now we need to create some roles. We can do that using the manifest. There's a section here called app roles. I'm just going to paste a few in there. Okay, you need to create unique GUIDs for these, for each ID, for each role. Okay, let's just save that. Okay, let's go and give some users some of those roles. Okay, so let's go here. We need to get to our enterprise applications. Select our application. Users and groups. Add user group. Let's select some users. I'm going to select Fred Johnson. And I'm going to assign him the admin role. And I'm going to assign him role 1. And role 2. So Fred's got all 3 roles now. I just want to check on one last thing before we start coding. Let's go back to our user flow and just make sure that we have this roles attribute created and that it's being returned as a claim. Okay, I think that's it for this bit. Now we can get on with some coding. Okay, so here's our policy function. If you remember from the last 2 videos, I've changed it a little bit. I've added some extension methods to handle the requests and the response data. The reverse proxy is still there. We're going to be using that to debug the new function that we're using. Right, we need to make sure that we have these NuGet packages installed, Azure.identity and Microsoft.graph. You need those two. Okay, so let's get on with our new roles function. First off, I just want to correct a typo that's been bugging me. Okay, let's get to our function. So I've created a function called getUserRoles, and what we want to do is grab the body from this request and serialize it into an object so we can see what is actually being passed to us via the connector. Okay, so we're going to need to create a class. Let's put it here for now, and then let's serialize the body into that class. So that will serialize the request body into this requester info class. Let's put a breakpoint on there. Just need to go back and change our API connector and make sure it's pointing and make sure our reverse proxy is pointing to the right function. Save. Okay, let's run that. Let's log in again. Right, so I've hit a breakpoint. Let's just step through a couple of lines. And here's our requester info, and it brings back a bunch of stuff about the client. So the display name, the email address, and the client ID. But this is the one that we want, the object ID. This is the one that we're looking for. Okay. Right, so now we can start looking at our graph service. Before we do that, we need to collect some information, and we need to add it to our local JSON settings. So first of all, we need to collect our client ID. We can get that, where are we? From here. And we need a tenant ID. And we also need a client secret. So we can go in here. Let's just destroy that one. So we create a new client secret. Just gonna call it secret. Copy the value. Paste it into here. And the last one that we need is our principal ID. So your app registrations provides a trust relationship between your API or your client and the identity provider, in which in this case is Azure AD. Your application object is the definition of your application, but the service principal is the instance of the application. Now you can find your service principal if you go to your app registration and click this link here, or if you go back to the root of your directory into enterprise applications, find your application, and the principal ID value that we're looking for is this one here, this object ID. So let's copy that and then paste that here into your principal ID. Okay, so let's look at our Graph API service. Contains one method. I've set it up. I've configured it as a service, and I'm injecting it into our policy class. And we're using it in our get user roles function. So let's run it and take a look. Sign in. So we've hit our constructor. It's going to pull in the details we have from our JSON settings. It's going to create an authentication object, and then it will create our graph service client. So now we've hit our get user roles function. We have our requester info. We're going to call the Graph API get user roles function, passing our object ID. It's going to make two calls. The first one will grab the user information, and then the second one will grab our service principal details. So we have our user details, and that tells us that our user has three roles assigned to it, but there's nothing in the actual role information itself to tell you what roles they have. So now let's look at our principal, and we have And here are our app roles. I know you only saw me set up 3, but I did set up an extra one. Okay, and that would be called extra. So here we have our actual our roles and the names. And we can see they all have an ID. So from our user object, we're going to pull our role IDs. There they are. And then from our principal object, we're going to pull those roles out which match those role IDs. And then that should give us the values of the roles assigned to that user. And then that's going to wrap it up into our new roles object and pass it back in our extension roles claim. Okay, so if we sign back into our client application, okay, we get the breakpoint. So we can see that those values have been returned in our extension roles claim, but that still won't fix this. So we hit privacy and we get access denied. So what we need to do is we need to add a transformation class. I'm going to just put it here for now. I'm going to put a breakpoint on it, and I'm going to add it as a service. Just put it up there, and that will transform our extension roles claim into multiple role claims. So let's just try that. So it's hit our transformation class. Let's just step through it. And it's found that we have a claim there. And then it's going to split out those values into an array. And then we're just going to write them back as role claims. So we hit run again. We get to our user. We can see the claims, and there they are, each one's a role. We've still got the existing extension roles claim. So if we continue, we can now access that page. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. Take care. Goodbye now.